Hello everyone, my name is Helena Lind. I am 34 years old and 4 months ago, my own parents filed a petition in Dallas County Probate Court, asking a judge to declare me mentally unfit to handle my life, my money, and everything I owned. Imagine the courtroom, fluorescent lights buzzing softly above. My father, Anders Lind, sitting next to an expensive estate attorney, posture stiff, jaw tight, the same position he held at the head of our dinner table for as long as I can remember. My mother, Eva, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief, showing quiet heartbreak as if she had practiced it for years. Their lawyer barely hiding his confidence from across the aisle, like the result was already decided. They were not asking for support. They were asking for control. My bank accounts, my car, my apartment. They described me as childish, withdrawn, unable to manage my own responsibilities. What they did not know was what I truly had. And there was one thing, just one detail, that Anders Lind, the man who had controlled every room he walked into for 3 decades, never thought to check. Public records. The same public records processed every single day at the Dallas County Clerk's office where his daughter worked. Before I explain what happened next, if this story connects with you, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you honestly want to. And tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is there right now. Now let me take you back 4 months. It was a Tuesday evening in November. I remember clearly because Tuesdays were my slow cooker nights. I would come home to my small studio apartment in Oak Lawn, lift the lid, eat something warm at my tiny kitchen table, read for an hour, and then go to sleep. That was my routine. Simple, steady, mine. My apartment was a 450-square-foot walk-up on the 2nd floor in a normal middle-class neighborhood where no one asked personal questions and no one offered unnecessary help. The faucet dripped unless you turned it exactly the right way. The radiator knocked loudly at 2 a.m. The rent was $2,350 a month, and in 7 years I had never missed a single payment. I stood at the counter sorting my mail. Electric bill, grocery store flyer, and then a white envelope, heavier than the rest, stamped with the return address, Dallas County Probate Court, No. 2. I opened it while still standing. Petition. For appointment of guardian. Petitioners, Anders Lind and Eva Lind. Respondent, Helena Marie Lind. Grounds. Respondent lacks capacity for self-care and financial management. My hands began to shake. Not because I was afraid of the court. I had worked inside one my entire adult life. I knew exactly what guardianship petitions looked like. I had filed hundreds of them into archive boxes over the years. What made my hands tremble was something else entirely. The realization that my parents had sat across from a lawyer and spoken the words out loud. Our daughter cannot take care of herself. Give us authority. Give us control. I placed the document down on the worn Formica counter next to the small, black notebook I kept in my kitchen drawer. 11 years of investment records written in my own handwriting, dates, contributions, quarterly totals. My father used to say his daughter did not know how to do anything except sort papers. He was correct about the paper. He was completely wrong about everything else. The money they believed I had and the money I actually had were separated by a distance Anders Lind could never have imagined. To understand what happened in that courtroom, you need to understand my father. Anders was the kind of man who sat at the head of every table, literally. Thanksgiving, Christmas, a random Wednesday dinner. It did not matter. Back straight, voice filling the room so fully that there was no space left for anyone else. If my mother started a sentence, he would finish it for her. If I offered an opinion, he would flick his hand like he was brushing away a small insect. "What do girls know about that?" he would say. For over 20 years, he ran Lindholm Construction Group, a mid-sized contracting company with 15 crew members and commercial projects across North Texas. He wore his success like protective armor, loud, polished, certain. A silver Lexus SUV shined in our Plano driveway. A Rolex on his wrist. Not quite what it seemed. A 4-bedroom house that looked solid and impressive from the outside. But appearances are only surface details, and Anders never allowed anyone close enough to examine the cracks underneath. My Mother Eva fought in a different way. She did not command. She cried. She sighed heavily. She called at 7 a.m. with, "I just worry about you, sweetheart," in a tone that made you feel guilty simply for being independent. If you said no to her, she would call every aunt, cousin, and church friend within 50 miles and tell them you were troubled, ungrateful, distant. Together, they formed a system. Anders directed. Eva enforced through guilt. Anyone who resisted became the problem. What I did not know, what almost no one knew outside a bankruptcy courtroom, was that Lindholm Construction Group had filed Chapter 7 6 months before that envelope arrived. The Lexus was 3 payments overdue. The house had a foreclosure notice, taped inside a kitchen cabinet where visitors would not see it. Anders Lind was not acting out of love or concern. He was sinking, and he needed something, someone, he could legally control. People often ask, "Why didn't you cut them off years ago?" It is a fair question, and the answer has 3 parts. The first part was money. When I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in information science and a job at the Dallas County Clerk's office earning $31,000 a year, I carried $47,000 in student loans. My father had co-signed them, and he reminded me of that the way some people mention the weather. Casually, frequently, with just enough warning in his voice. "If you walk away from this family, Helena, I call the bank. You understand?" 1 phone call. He could not actually do that. That is not how co-signed loans work. But I was 22, and I did not understand that yet. I paid off every single dollar by the time I was 31. I remember pressing confirm on the final payment while sitting in my 2017 Toyota Corolla in a grocery store parking lot. I sat there afterward and cried for 20 minutes. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in 9 years, Anders Lind had nothing of mine in his hands. He just did not know it yet. The second reason was my brother Noah, 13 years younger than me. Quiet. Brilliant. The kind of kid who would read entire Wikipedia pages for fun and never mention it. He still lived under my father's roof. If I had cut contact back then, Anders would have punished him for it. He would have drained Noah's college fund, threatened to throw him out, used him as leverage, or worse, hurt him emotionally just to prove he could. I could not risk that. Noah turned 21 last year. He is in his 2nd year at the University of Texas at Austin on a merit scholarship he earned himself. He is not a hostage anymore. The third reason was a document. When I was 24, I signed a limited power of attorney, giving my father authority to handle a small insurance claim on my car. It seemed harmless and temporary. I did not read the fine print carefully enough. I trusted him because he was my father. And at 24, that word still carried weight for me. Anders kept the original document. 3 years later, I officially revoked it, notarized, filed, recorded. But when he submitted his guardianship petition to the court, he attached the original power of attorney as if it were still active, as if I had once willingly given him control and might need to do it again. He did not mention the revocation. He hid it. He misrepresented it to the court. I did not know that part yet. Not until discovery. When you work in archives, you learn something most people never think about. The moment you open a file matters just as much as what is inside it. I did not panic immediately. I waited. I prepared carefully. And when all 3 chains broke, the student loans fully paid, Noah financially independent, the power of attorney legally revoked, Anders lost every piece of leverage he once had over me, so he escalated to a courtroom. And that was his mistake. You can ignore a phone call. You can block a number. But once something is filed in court, it exists in a way that cannot be ignored. He forced me into a battle I could not avoid, so I prepared for the only fight I would ever need. Here is what most people do not realize about working in public records. You spend your days surrounded by the financial structure of an entire county. Property deeds, tax lien certificates, foreclosure, filings, trust transfers, probate records. Thousands of them, year after year, passing through your hands. Most people process the documents and move on. I processed them, and I paid close attention. At 23, I began reading about index fund investing. Nothing flashy, nothing risky. The Bogle approach: buy the entire market, keep expenses low, do not touch it, let time do the heavy lifting. I opened a Vanguard Total Market Index Fund account with my first $400 and set up automatic contributions every single month without fail. I treated it like a bill that had to be paid, just like rent or electricity. Even when money felt tight, even when I wanted something new, I paid my future first. I increased the amount each year, slowly and quietly. No announcements, no conversations at family dinners, just steady deposits month after month, year after year. While my father was buying appearances, I was buying ownership. While he was financing cars to look successful, I was purchasing small pieces of thousands of companies. I reinvested every dividend. I tracked every quarterly statement in that small black notebook. I learned about compound growth the way some people learn about religion, with patience and belief in something invisible at first. $10 became 50, 50 became hundreds, hundreds became thousands. Time did what time always does when you leave it alone. It multiplied. I lived below my means on purpose. I did not upgrade apartments. I did not lease luxury vehicles. I did not carry credit card balances. I cooked at home. I repaired things instead of replacing them. When coworkers went out for expensive dinners, I joined sometimes, but not always. I was not miserable. I was intentional. Every choice had a reason behind it. Every dollar had an assignment. By the time my parents filed that petition, the quiet girl who only sorted paper had built something they had never imagined. And the proof of it was sitting not in a safe, not in a hidden account offshore, but in plain sight, documented, legal, traceable. Public records had taught me something powerful. Ownership leaves a trail. Debt leaves a trail too. And trails can be followed by anyone patient enough to look. The night I received the petition, I did not call them. I did not cry for long. I made tea. I sat at my small kitchen table. I opened my laptop, and I began to prepare. I lived on less than $100 and $200 a month, a small studio apartment, rice and beans most nights, library books instead of buying new ones, and a used Toyota Corolla that I paid for in cash. Everything else went into investments. I did not travel much. I did not shop for fun. I did not upgrade my phone every year. I kept my life simple on purpose. By the time I was 25, I started noticing something unusual at work. Tax lien properties. Houses auctioned because the owners owed back taxes, sometimes just a few $1,000s. One afternoon during my lunch break, I saw a 2-bedroom house in Irving listed for $23,000 at a tax auction. The assessed value was over $110,000. I did quick math on a napkin while finishing my sandwich. Then I bought it. I spent my weekends fixing drywall, painting walls, changing light fixtures with the help of YouTube tutorials, and using a toolbox I borrowed from a coworker. I learned slowly. I made mistakes. I patched them and tried again. 6 months later, I rented it out for $1,500 a month. The tenants kept the place cleaner than I ever had. Then I purchased another property, then a third. I did not celebrate. I did not post about it online. I simply kept going. My coworker Susan Caldwell was 63 years old, a retired CPA who insisted that retirement was dull and extremely overrated. She worked part-time at the Dallas County Clerk's office because, as she liked to say, someone has to keep these people honest. Over time, she became more than just a coworker. She became a mentor, and if I am honest, something like a guardian angel. Susan taught me how to read financial statements the way a surgeon studies an MRI, slowly and carefully, searching for details most people ignore. She reviewed my tax returns every year. She notarized my paperwork without asking unnecessary questions. She never once suggested I was foolish for living in a modest studio while quietly owning 3 rental houses across the Metroplex. No one at work knew about my properties. I did not drive a luxury car. I did not wear expensive brands. My desk held a chipped file organizer and a coffee mug with a fading logo, and a county-issued monitor showing a records management dashboard. If you looked at my screen, you would see nothing but normal paperwork. You would not see the Vanguard account I checked at night, the one that had been compounding steadily for more than a decade. Susan was the only person who knew I owned more than my apartment suggested. But even she did not know the full number, not until the court required me to reveal it. When I refused to sign the voluntary guardianship papers, Anders changed his strategy. I will give my father this much. When he wanted something, he moved. Quickly. Within a week, he started a campaign, not against a business rival, not against a competitor, but against his own daughter. He moved with the speed of a man who had spent 30 years running job sites and giving orders. Phone calls began. Almost immediately. My Aunt Carol, his older sister, who had always deferred to him, called one Thursday evening. Her voice softened into that careful tone people use when they believe someone might be unstable. "Sweetheart, your dad says you've been having a hard time. You know you can talk to me, right? My cousin texted me. Heard things are rough. Let me know if you need anything." He had never texted me before. Eva was more subtle. She did not mention me directly. She did not need to. She posted on Facebook, "When your child refuses help, all a mother can do is pray. Some battles you cannot fight alone." 87 reactions. 31 comments. Every single one praising her dedication. Meanwhile, my phone would not stop buzzing. 14 missed calls in one day. Some numbers I recognized, some I did not. Anders was not just talking. He was shaping a story. Helena is unstable. Helena is alone. Helena needs intervention. He was preparing witnesses. Late at night, his messages started coming in. "You think you're smarter than your father? A woman with no husband, no family living in a box. You will regret this, Helena." I did not delete them. I took screenshots of every text, captured the timestamps, saved them to a flash drive labeled AL, and locked it in my desk drawer at work. Then something else happened, something quieter, but more serious. Aunt Carol called again. This time her concern sounded practiced. "Your father mentioned you might be dealing with depression, serious depression. He just wants to make sure you're getting help." That was when I understood Anders was not simply calling relatives. He was coaching them. Then the court did something he did not expect. As part of the standard Texas guardianship process, the judge ordered both parties to submit a complete financial disclosure, a full list of assets, debts, income, and expenses. Routine, procedural, the kind of paperwork most people hate. For me, it felt like an opportunity. I sat at my small kitchen table in Oak Lawn and read the order twice. Then, for the first time in months, I smiled. Not a sarcastic smile, not a defensive one, a genuine smile. They wanted the court to review my finances. Fine. Let the court review my finances. I pulled out the black moleskin notebook from my drawer. The spine cracked slightly from 11 years of use. Every page filled with neat handwriting. Dates, purchase prices, account balances, rental income, quarterly Vanguard totals, notes in the margins, reminders to reinvest dividends, repairs logged, carefully. At 8:30 that night, I called Susan. She answered on the second ring. She always did. 30 years in accounting had trained her never to let a phone ring 4 times. "Susan, I need your help," I said. "I need to turn everything into a formal court disclosure. All of it." There was a short pause. "All of it?" she repeated. "Everything." Another pause. I could almost hear her adjusting her glasses. "This is going to be one hell of a document." I know. I had never added it all together in one place before. 11 years of disciplined saving, compound growth, reinvested dividends. 3. Rental properties with equity and steady cash flow. Emergency savings. My 2017 Toyota Corolla. My lease agreement. Every account. Every figure. 3 days later, we sat at Susan's kitchen table, staring at the final number at the bottom of the spreadsheet. She slowly removed her reading glasses and set them down, Your father has absolutely no idea, does he? No, I said quietly. He doesn't, and honestly, I felt a little shocked myself. I had been so focused on the system, save, invest, maintain, repeat, that I had never stepped back to see the full picture. Wealth grows quietly, like roots pushing through concrete in the dark. You do not see it happening. You do not feel it shifting. Until one day, the ground beneath you is not the same ground you started on. While I was gathering the truth, Anders was building something else. A lie. During the discovery process, when both sides exchange evidence before a hearing, I received copies of what his attorney had submitted to the court on my parents' behalf. His name was Daniel Keating, 50 years old, sharply dressed, specializing in guardianship and probate litigation. He had built a strong reputation in Dallas County for winning 12 straight guardianship cases, most involving elderly clients whose families wanted control of their estates. Tailored suits, a Mont Blanc pen, the calm confidence of a man who had rarely been surprised in a courtroom. He billed $400 an hour, and Anders was paying him with borrowed money he did not have, gambling that once he gained control of my assets, he would recover every dollar many times over. The packet Keating submitted contained 3 main pieces of evidence. First, a sworn affidavit signed by Anders and Eva, claiming I lived in isolation, refused social contact, and showed an inability to manage basic adult responsibilities. It was fiction wrapped in legal language, notarized, polished, and submitted without hesitation. Second, letters from my Aunt Carol and a former neighbor, Michael Turner. Carol's letter was emotional but unclear. Michael's was almost embarrassing. He had lived 3 houses down from my parents and had not spoken to me in 6 years. It was obvious Anders had guided them both. Then there was the third document, the one that made my chest tighten. A psychological evaluation written by Dr. Leonard Bishop. According to the report, I showed signs of social withdrawal, executive dysfunction, and poor financial judgment. I read it twice. Slowly. Then I looked at the header. Dr. Bishop had never met me, never examined me, never spoken to me. The entire evaluation was based on descriptions provided by my parents. A psychological assessment of a woman the doctor had never even seen. I set the paper down carefully and picked up my phone. Claire, I said when my attorney answered. The psych report. He never evaluated me. I know, she replied calmly. That is not just unethical. It may qualify as fraud upon the court, and that is exactly how we are going to treat it. I should explain how I found Claire Whitmore. 2 days after receiving the court summons, I went to the downtown Dallas Public Library. Not home, not work, somewhere neutral, somewhere no one could watch my search history. I searched for attorneys who specialized in fighting abusive guardianships. There were not many. It is a narrow area of law, the kind most people never think about until they desperately need it. Claire's name appeared in a local article about guardianship reform in Texas. She had represented 3 adult clients whose families attempted to take control of their finances. She won all 3 cases. Her office was a converted storefront tucked into a quiet street downtown, easy to miss unless you were specifically looking for it. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the wall behind her desk, a framed JD from the University of Texas School of Law hanging straight and careful, a mug of tea that had obviously gone cold hours before. She was 42, direct and steady, with the kind of quiet calm that told you she had heard worse stories than mine, and had not been shaken by them. Tell me what they want, she said. Everything, I answered. My bank accounts, my car, my apartment. And what do you actually have? I placed a folder on her desk. Not the heavy quartz folder my father's lawyer had used. Mine. The one Susan and I had put together late at night at my kitchen table. Claire opened it and turned the pages slowly, one by one. I watched her eyes move across every line. For 30 full seconds she did not speak. Then she lifted her head. Your parents have no idea about any of this, do they? My father has never once asked how much I earn, I said. He believes he already knows. Claire leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. Here's what we're going to do. First, I will petition the court to appoint an independent investigator, someone who will actually sit down with you instead of writing a report based on your father's version of events. Second, we will fully comply with the financial disclosure order, every document, every statement. Third, she paused. We do not show a single card until the hearing. She studied me carefully. One more thing. Pull your credit report. Tonight. All 3 bureaus. Don't wait. Why? In my experience, she said slowly, choosing her words, when a parent files for guardianship over a financially independent adult child, it is rarely the first line they have crossed. At that moment, I did not fully understand what she meant. Not yet. Meanwhile, Anders was not limiting his efforts to the courtroom. He was shaping the story in public, carefully and quietly. At First United Methodist Church of Plano, he told the home men's prayer group that his oldest child was struggling mentally. He avoided the word guardianship. Instead, he used the word intervention. It sounded softer, kinder, almost heroic, like an act of rescue instead of control. He said he and Eva were stepping in before it was too late. 3 men offered to pray, with him. One shook his hand and said, "You're doing the right thing, Anders." Eva carried the story even further. She called my father's former business partners, some of whom still did not know about Lindholm Construction Group's bankruptcy, and mentioned a serious family health issue in a low, worried voice. She contacted neighbors. She reached out to old acquaintances. She even found a way to contact the wife of the real estate agent connected to my building's management company. She spread the story widely, and the effects reached me on a Thursday morning. I was at my desk processing a stack of property transfers when my supervisor walked over quietly and asked if we could step into the conference room for a minute. Her tone was gentle but serious. She closed the door softly before speaking. "I received a call," she said. She did not say from whom. "Someone asked about your mental health status and whether it is affecting your work performance." She paused and then added carefully, "I am required to ask, is there anything happening that HR should know about?" I met her eyes directly. "My parents have filed a guardianship petition. I am contesting it. It has no legal basis. My work has not been affected, and it will not be." She nodded and wrote something in her notebook. "All right." I returned to my desk, but the atmosphere had changed. 2 coworkers looked at me differently in the hallway. Someone had already seen Ava's Facebook post. The story was spreading exactly the way Anders wanted it to. Then my landlord called. Anders had contacted the management office of my building, expressing concern about his daughter's ability to maintain stable housing. My landlord was a decent man who had never once received a complaint about me. He called simply to check in. "I just want to make sure everything is okay," he said. He did not threaten to refuse renewal. He did not need to. The message was clear. Doubt had been planted. Anders was taking apart my life from the outside inward. Employer, housing, reputation, brick by brick. And he believed he was doing this to someone with no support, no help, no options. That night, I followed Claire's advice. I pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus. I sat at my kitchen table in the quiet, my laptop open, a glass of water beside me that I never touched. The first page loaded. Everything looked normal at first glance. My credit cards, my auto insurance, my rental history, clean, organized. Mine. Then I scrolled further. 2 credit card accounts I had never opened. 1 Visa, 1 MasterCard. Opened. 14 and 11 months earlier. Combined balance, $42,700. Billing addresses I did not recognize, except one matched a P.O. box Anders had used for Lindholm Construction Group. I kept scrolling, a home equity line of credit. $140,000 drawn against my second rental property in Iconium. Garland. Opened 9 months earlier. The application carried my name, my social security number, and a signature that was not mine. I sat very still. My parents had not filed for guardianship to gain access to my finances. They had already been inside them. Using information from a power of attorney I had revoked 3 years earlier. Anders had kept the original document, presented it as active, and used it to access credit in my name, pushing borrowed money into a company already collapsing under bankruptcy. When I added everything together, credit cards, line of credit, interest, penalties, the total exposure reached $389,420. I called Claire at 11:15 p.m. "I found it," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. 2 fraudulent credit cards, a home equity line with a forged signature, almost $400,000. There was a short silence on the other end. "This is identity theft," she said quietly. "And this is exactly why they need the guardianship. They are trying to retroactively legalize what they have already done illegally. What do? We can report it to the police immediately." "No." The word came out faster than I expected. "Not yet." She paused. "Helena, that is a risk. I understand the risk. I also understand my father." I stared at the dark window above my sink. "He needs to hear it read aloud on the record in a room he cannot walk out of. That is the only language he has ever respected." Another silence. "All right," Claire said finally. "Then we commission a forensic audit. An independent CPA firm. Fully documented. Fully admissible. We attach it as a supplemental exhibit to your asset disclosure. Do it." After I ended the call, I sat in the dark for a long time. The faucet dripped slowly. The radiator clicked and knocked. And somewhere in Plano, inside a 4-bedroom house with a foreclosure notice hidden in a kitchen cabinet, Anders Lind was sleeping peacefully, convinced his plan was succeeding. 3 weeks before the hearing, the court-appointed investigator arrived. Her name was Patricia Gomez. She was 55, with short gray hair and a professionally neutral expression that made you want to tell the truth because you sensed she had already heard every possible lie. The court had assigned her to determine whether I was incapable of managing my own life. She stood in the doorway of my 450-square-foot studio apartment and took everything in. Clean counters, bed made, dishes washed, bills organized in labeled folders, all current. "May I come in?" she asked. Of course. She stayed for 90 minutes. She asked about my job, my daily routine, my friends, my finances. Her questions were careful, designed to uncover confusion, instability, inconsistency. I answered simply. I told her about my work at the records office, the novels I read at night, the slow cooker meals I prepared during the week, the Sunday morning walks through the neighborhood park. She wrote everything down. Then she asked about my parents. "They believe you cannot manage your life." "Yes." "And you disagree?" "Yes." She looked at me steadily. "Why do you think they filed this petition?" I held her gaze, and for the first time I said the truth without softening it. "You would have to ask them that." Patricia met with Anders and Eva the following week. Later, Claire told me how that meeting had gone. Anders had dominated the conversation, interrupted Eva more than once, leaned forward with visible irritation in his voice. "She is 34, he had said, tapping his finger sharply on the table. "Living in a box, no husband, no children, no future. And you call that normal?" Eva, of course, cried. She always did. Patricia's report would be filed before the hearing. I did not know what she wrote, but when she left my apartment, she paused at the door and glanced at my bookshelf, 3 rows deep, half finance, half literature. Then she looked back at me with an expression I could not fully read. "Thank you, Helena," she said softly. "I have what I need." And she gave the smallest hint of a smile. 3 days before the hearing, at 11:47 p.m., my phone lit up on the nightstand. Dad. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something inside me, the part that had been waiting 11 years for this moment, answered. "Helena." His voice was low and controlled, the tone he used when he wanted authority without raising his volume. You need to withdraw your objection. Sign the voluntary guardianship. Your mother is sick over this. I am carrying debt you cannot imagine. You are our daughter. You have responsibilities. I have already said no, I replied. I will. Say it again in court. There was a slight crack in his steady tone, a small break in the control he worked so hard to maintain. You think you can challenge me in front of a judge? You honestly believe anyone will take your side? You're a woman. Who files papers in a government office, Helena. That is all you have ever been. I allowed the silence to hang in the air. 2 seconds. 3. You'll find out what a woman who files papers can really do. Good night, Dad. I ended the call. On my kitchen table, the finished disclosure file was waiting for me. 40 pages marked with yellow tabs, every number double-checked, every document notarized. Claire had confirmed that the forensic audit was complete. The independent CPA firm had followed every unauthorized transaction, documented the forged HELOC signature, identified the fake credit card applications, and linked them directly to Anders and Eva Lind. Everything was prepared. The hearing was set for Tuesday morning. 72 hours. I lay awake staring at the ceiling while a streetlight cast a pale rectangle across the plaster. I was not afraid, not the way I had been at 22, staring at a co-signed loan like it was a chain locked around my ankle. This felt different. This was the quiet before something that could not be undone. 3 days. 3 days and it would be over. One way or another. If you have ever stared at the ceiling at night, knowing that the people who were supposed to protect, you were the same ones threatening to tear your life apart, then you understand this moment. Now let me take you to Tuesday. Tuesday, 8:45 a.m., Dallas County Probate Court Number 2. I arrived early. I have never been late to anything in my entire life, and I was not about to start with the hearing that would decide whether I kept control over my own existence. I wore a light blue button-down shirt, dark slacks, flat shoes, no jewelry except a simple wristwatch, and very little makeup. I looked exactly like what I was, a county employee on her day off. Nothing dramatic, nothing defensive. The courtroom was smaller than people imagine. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights softly humming overhead, 2 tables facing the bench, a gallery with about 20 seats, mostly empty. Anders and Eva were already seated at the left table. My father wore a charcoal gray suit I had never seen before, new or borrowed or bought on a credit line he could not manage. His back was perfectly straight. Eva sat beside him in navy blue, gripping a handkerchief like a prop from a play. Between them sat Daniel Keating, laptop open, Monty. Blank pen uncapped, silver cufflinks catching the light. He looked like a man who had already written his closing argument. Behind them, Aunt Carol sat in the first row, hands folded tightly. Michael Turner shifted uneasily next to her. I walked to the table on the right and sat beside Claire Whitmore. Claire wore a dark blazer, no accessories, her briefcase closed. She did not look across the aisle. She did not need to. On our table rested a clear plastic folder. 40 pages, yellow tabs. I glanced up briefly. Anders' fingers were tapping against the table. Slow, steady, rhythmic. A habit from my childhood. He always did that when he felt confident, when he believed the outcome was already decided. I had watched those fingers tap for 34 years. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Raymond Castillo took the bench. 57 years old, silver hair, known for 2 things: fairness and no patience for wasted time. In the matter of Lind versus Lind, the clerk announced. Petition for appointment of guardian. It had started. Daniel Keating stood first. He buttoned his jacket smoothly and stepped toward the podium. Your Honor, he began, voice calm and controlled. We are here today out of genuine concern for the well-being of Helena Lind, age 34. Ms. Lind lives alone in a studio apartment, maintains minimal social contact, earns a modest income as a records analyst, and over an extended period has shown an inability to establish or maintain the type of personal and professional stability that reflects sound judgment and independence. He paused on purpose. Her parents, Anders and Eva Lind, are not here as opponents, he continued gently. They are here as parents, concerned parents. They have watched their daughter withdraw from family, from community, from opportunity. They sincerely believe that guardianship is the most compassionate intervention available. Compassion. That was the word he selected. He introduced the affidavit. Anders's statement was clinical and steady, a portrait of quiet fatherly concern. Ava's was emotional and shaking, filled with phrases like, "I fear for her safety," and "a mother's helpless heart." Then came the letters from Aunt Carol and Michael Turner. "We're just worried about her. She keeps to herself. It isn't normal." Keating lifted Dr. Leonard Bishop's report so the judge could clearly see the official letterhead. "A licensed psychological evaluation, Your Honor, concluding that Ms. Lind displays markers consistent with impaired executive function and reduced capacity for independent financial management." Eva dabbed her eyes softly. Anders sat stiff and upright, his face carefully arranged into something that looked like pain. But to anyone who truly knew him, it was not pain. It was control. Keating returned to his seat, uncapped his Mont Blanc pen again, and wrote a short note. He glanced across the aisle at me with quiet dismissal. The look said everything. She works. For the county. She has nothing. I sat through every word. Incapable. Withdrawn. Unable to manage. Eva's performance with the handkerchief. Carol's practiced concern. Michael Turner's vague testimony about how I didn't come outside much 6 years ago when I was 28 and spending weekends renovating a property he did not even know I owned. I listened as my life was framed as failure. A studio apartment, an older car, a government job, a woman living alone. Under the table, my hands were tightly clasped. Not from anger, from restraint. 11 years of restraint compressed into a single morning. Claire's hand brushed lightly against my forearm. "Not yet," she whispered without turning her head. Almost. I looked at my father. He was not watching Keating. He was not watching the judge. He was watching me. And in his eyes I saw what I had seen my entire life. Certainty. Not certainty that he was correct. He never doubted that. Certainty that the world was arranged the way he believed it should be. That daughters stayed small. That authority always won. That the loudest voice controlled the room. He did not blink. Neither did I. I lowered my eyes for 3 seconds. Inhale. Exhale. Then I straightened my spine, placed both palms flat on the table, and faced forward. My father taught me something he never intended to teach. When you grow up underestimated, you prepare for everything, because you know no one will ever give you a second chance. The folder rested between Claire and me. Yellow tabs, 40 pages. Every number confirmed. Anders had brought a story. I had brought proof. Judge Raymond Castillo turned toward our table. "Ms. Whitmore, does the respondent wish to respond?" Claire stood and buttoned her blazer. "Yes, Your Honor, we would like to begin with the report from the court-appointed investigator." She did not hurry. She did not dramatize. She simply asked the court to review the findings of Patricia Gomez, the independent investigator assigned to evaluate me. The clerk opened the sealed report and began reading the summary into the record. The investigator conducted a 90-minute in-person evaluation at the respondent's residence. The respondent demonstrated full cognitive capacity, including clear explanation of financial responsibilities, steady employment history, organized living conditions, and no clinical signs of impaired judgment or executive dysfunction. Across the aisle, Anders uncrossed his legs, then crossed them again. The investigator further notes that the petitioner's description of the respondent as socially isolated and incapable of maintaining relationships is inconsistent with her stable 11-year employment record, structured home environment, and articulate self-presentation. Keating stopped writing. His Mont Blanc pen hovered slightly above his legal pad. And finally, the clerk continued, the psychological evaluation submitted by the petitioners was authored by Dr. Leonard Bishop, who has no documented record of directly examining the respondent. The evaluation appears to have been based solely on information provided by family members, raising significant ethical and evidentiary concerns. The word ethical seemed to hang in the air. I did not look at my father this time. I did not need to. Because for the first time since the hearing began, the certainty in the room had shifted. It was no longer sitting at their table. It was sitting at mine.
If you like the video, do not forget to hit the subscribe button for more videos.